This is the Hessaire MFC3600 2200CFM Evaporative Cooler. It turns a stalled, breathless garage into a space I can actually work in, and it does it fast without the heavy power draw of an air conditioner. I think of this as a practical evaporative cooler for people who live with dry heat and need real airflow in a garage, workshop, patio, or any semi-outdoor space. I am the person who opens a garage door, gets hit with a blast of oven air, and still needs to finish a project. I did not want extra ducting, I did not want a compressor unit, and I did not want to babysit a complicated control panel. I wanted a strong, simple way to push cooler air across my work area. The design is unapologetically functional. The body is tough plastic, not pretty, but it shrugs off scuffs, and it is light enough that I do not dread moving it. The caster wheels are what matter to me. They roll across concrete, tile, and those little garage floor transitions without getting stuck. Up on top, there are just a few controls that actually matter in daily use. I have a switch for the water pump, a dial for fan speed with low, medium, and high, and a swing control that moves the vent side to side. A visible water level window on the front tells me how much is left at a glance. There is a large front fill door for pouring in water, and a standard garden hose connector on the side if I want a continuous feed. I do not need to stare at a screen or tap through sections of menus. If it is hot, I turn the pump on, pick a fan speed, and get back to work. Setup took me minutes. I parked it in an open spot with some breathing room so air can cycle, and that alone makes a big difference with evaporative cooling. On days when I am moving it around, I use a jug to fill the tank from the front door. The tank holds about 10 gallons, which gives me around 3 to 4 hours before I need to refill, depending on heat and fan speed. When I am settled in one spot, I connect a hose to the side, and the internal float valve prevents overflow. I plug it into a normal outlet, flip the pump, and wait about a minute for the pads to soak. Then I choose a fan speed and point the vents where I want the cool air. Nothing about that process feels fussy. Performance is all about airflow and evaporation. The fan can push roughly 2,200 cubic feet per minute, and in real life that translates to a serious column of moving air. In my garage, which is around 400 square feet, the first thing I notice is the dead air gets replaced by a steady breeze very quickly. As the pads saturate and the evaporation kicks in, the air gets noticeably cooler. It is not the sealed chill of an air conditioner. It is more of a refreshing drop that takes the edge off the heat and makes sweat evaporate instead of hang on my skin. If I stand in the direct stream, it feels like immediate relief. With the swing turned on, it washes that cooler airflow across a wider area while I move around. A big factor with this style of cooling is ventilation and humidity. When I give it fresh, dry air to work with, it shines. If I shut everything and try to run it like a traditional air conditioner, I can feel the room get damp and the cooling falls off. I had the best results with some cross ventilation. A cracked door or an open window gives the warm, humid air somewhere to go, and the cooler air keeps coming. I care about noise because I spend hours around my tools and I talk on the phone in the garage. On low and medium, it is a gentle hum that fades into the background. On high, it is a steady whoosh of air. I can still have a normal conversation or listen to music, but if I put it right next to me on the highest setting, I hear it. For the amount of air it moves, the sound is reasonable, just not whisper quiet. I ran a bunch of real scenarios to see where it helps the most. In the early afternoon with the sun on the driveway, I rolled it a few feet inside the garage, opened the main door about a third of the way, and pointed the vent toward my workbench. After I primed the pads for a minute, the space went from stifling to workable. My back stopped soaking through my shirt. The tools that felt like they were baking were no longer scorching to the touch. When I took breaks, I stood in the direct stream, and it felt like stepping into shade with a breeze. During a backyard barbecue, I used it near the patio table. I did not want the air to blow the grill flames, so I set it up to one side and used the swing to sweep the airflow across the seating area. That felt great. People were not fanning themselves, and drinks did not sweat as much on the table. On a different day, I pulled a car into the driveway and worked under the hood. I pointed the stream across the front quarter panel and into my workspace. It kept me from overheating while I leaned over the engine bay. A regular fan in that situation just pushes hot air around. This actually cooled the air coming at me. Water management is a part of living with an evaporative cooler, and here it is not a headache. The front fill door is wide and easy to aim into. The side hose hookup with the float valve is a set it and forget it option when I plan to run it for a long stretch. The clear water gauge prevents guesswork. At the end of a long day, I flip off the pump and let the fan run for around 30 minutes so the pads can dry. That has kept any musty smell from building up. The panels come off without a fight, so I can rinse the pads and the reservoir every so often. Outside of refilling water, there is not much to maintain. In daily use, the simplicity is what I end up liking most. 3 controls that make sense. Big wheels that roll without drama. A body that can handle a bump from a ladder or a dropped wrench. A cooling method that rewards good airflow and ventilation. The power bill impact is another subtle win. With no compressor and no refrigerant loop, it sips electricity compared to a traditional window or split air conditioner. I am not watching the meter spin while trying to keep my garage livable. There are limitations I learned to respect. This is not for sealed bedrooms or humid basements. If the air cannot escape, it can feel sticky. It is not a decorator piece. In a living room with a carefully chosen couch and rug, this looks like a work tool because it is. And if I run it all day without a hose, I do refill the tank a couple of times. That is part of the deal with evaporative cooling. For me, those trade-offs are worth it because of the instant relief in the spaces where I actually need it. A specific use case that sold me was a weekend project swapping brake pads. The sun was brutal, the driveway was radiating heat, and I had a few hours of hands-on work ahead. I set the cooler in the shade just inside the garage, pointed the stream across my tool cart and toward the wheel well, and let the pads saturate. While I worked, I never felt that foggy, overheated slump. I stayed focused, my hands were not slipping from sweat, and I did not have to retreat inside every 10 minutes. That single afternoon made it obvious where this cooler earns its keep. There are a few thoughtful details I appreciate every time. The swing feature is actually useful, not a gimmick, because it spreads the relief across a wider area without me babysitting the direction. The dual fill options mean I can be casual with a jug or lock it in with a hose. The water level window is exactly the kind of small touch that saves a trip to the faucet at the wrong time. The drain and the easy access panels make cleaning straightforward, and the controls are physical dials and switches. When my hands are dusty or I am wearing gloves, that matters. If you live in a dry climate and need fast, practical cooling for a garage, workshop, patio, or driveway projects, this cooler makes a noticeable difference. If you want silent operation, a decorative look, or you are dealing with high humidity and sealed rooms, this is not the right tool. I am squarely in the first group, and I keep reaching for it because it takes a miserable heat problem and turns it into a manageable workday. I'll leave the details about the Hessaire MFC3600 2200CFM evaporative cooler in the comments for you to check out. See you in the next video.